Hi, I'm Jenny. I'm here to talk about making plushies from video game models. So I play a lot of video games. In particular, I play a lot of this one video game called Dota. And in Dota, there's this tiny monster that I thought would be adorable to turn into a plushie. So my goal of the plushie, final plushie, would be to have approximately the same 3D shape and have basically the same texture. So I start with this 3D model. It's made up of about 3 things. First is a set of 3D points. They form surfaces or faces in 3D space. They're essentially each surface is defined by a set of points and a normal to define an inside and an outside. Second is a set of 2D points and faces. They're known as UVs. And every face in 3D space maps to a face in 2D space. And what the UVs are for is they define how textures are projected into the 3D space. And lastly, we have the cool-looking texture. So since I have my 3D faces, and they are one-to-one relationship with my 2D faces, and they also map to my texture, I can theoretically take my texture, print it off as a piece of custom print fabric, cut it up, sew it together, and get back my plushie. So reality is not that simple because the original artist didn't have sewing patterns in mind when they created the UV clusters. So you can see it doesn't quite form seam lines, doesn't quite reconstruct the 3D shape. And also, they're not of same length. So you can see the head is many times larger than the body on the texture, which is not the case in the actual model. So first, to get it into patterns that you can actually sew, I basically use industry graphic tools to create my new UVs out of the same model as before. I create the UVs such that whenever 2 clusters of UVs join, that seam will be a final seam on my plushie. And so I have my old model, my old UVs, and my old texture. I have a new model, which is actually exactly the same as my old model, but with a new set of UVs. And I need to create a new texture or a pattern that can be printed. So I can take a face from my old UVs and find the corresponding face on my new UVs, compute a transformation matrix from the old to the new, and then transform my old texture into a new texture, one face at a time, essentially. So here's some of my code. Might be slightly hard to see. So essentially what I do is I just load up my texture and my 2 objects, the old and the new. And I do a seam equalize, which let's say there's an edge in 3D space. It maps to multiple edges in my 2D space. And I scale them so that the 2D edges are the same length so that when I sew them, they can be pieced back together. And then I do the transformation I talked about earlier, which is I take my old face and my new face, I compute a transformation matrix, and then I apply that to the texture and basically mask the relevant section and paste it to form a new texture. Here, most of the code is from Stack Overflow with some minor modifications.
Congratulations, you're a software engineer.
I do a try except to catch any weird singular matrices that come out. And so finally, I take my old texture and then I transform it to create the new texture that you see. That's one of 3 pieces because I try to space them out. And then I print that out as a custom print fabric and sew it back. And I have a plushie. You can see my code on GitHub.
Very cool.
Sweet.
And that's it. That's it.
Any questions for Jenny?
Like the coding or the sewing? So it's not like the cutting up and creating UV is pretty easy since like computer graphics artists have been doing it like for every art asset they generate. So that's not hard, and I don't think it takes too long. I don't know. All right.
What, last question?
Do you think you could, what's that thing called that made a lot of money where you make your own t-shirt over the internet? Could you scale this up so that people could just make their own plush toys by sending you models?
I think you just got funded.
Well, so a really cool application of this that I thought about today was, let's say you have a person as the model and not like a plushie or like some monster. You can actually use like computer graphics to, let's say, model clothes on top of the person and take the UVs and basically create your fabric or your clothing patterns out from that, which that is like kind of cool. But the really, really cool part is, let's say you can 3D scan people in. That's like super cheap, or with Connect or something like that. Then you can get super custom clothing, because then you can like cut based on like their actually scanned 3D model. But yeah.
Very cool.
Anyways.
All right, thank you.
Sweet.